So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our today's workshop. We can go to the next slide. All right, today's workshop, The Anatomy of Getting What You Want by Dr. Roshanak Hashemiyun. Thank you and welcome. Yes.
Sorry, could you make sure to hit the record button?
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Hi, my name is Christina Givalechian. I am a relationship manager with City National Bank, also the chair of the entrepreneurship committee with Finance Women Association of New York, who is a member of the New York Women in Business. Thank you. Next slide. The ground rule for today's event. You will be muted upon entry. Session is being recorded, and I welcome you to type your question into the chat window when you do, and I will monitor that, and I will ask Dr. Hashemiyun the question either as appropriate during the presentation or at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are getting into the anatomy of getting what you want, presented by Dr. Roshanak Hashemiyun. A few words about Dr. Hashemiyun. She is a scientific and executive consultant, as well as a transformational advisor. Highly trained as an academic and clinical researcher, she combines the power of modern science with emotional and spiritual intelligence to generate compelling and innovative approaches to help people and businesses become more purposeful, effective, and prosperous. As a founder of Access to the Path, she promotes the ethical growth and success of businesses and helps individuals elevate to the greatest version of themselves. Dr. Hashemiyun, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Christina. So hello and welcome, everybody. How are we all feeling today? How's everybody doing?
Great.
Yay. Does anybody feel like this? Who wants to feel like this?
It's too early for that.
Who wants to feel like this, huh? Who wants to feel like this getting to their goals? Who feels like or is afraid of feeling more like this when it comes to their goals? And so you just end up doing this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I unmute you.
Hi, I'm back.
Sorry, I unmute you, sorry, I apologize.
It's no worries. Can they hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you see, change is inevitable. Uncertainty, that's life. Okay, so then we end up feeling like this. And the reason is that traditional goal setting and things like New Year's resolutions, they're not all they're cracked up to be. You know, that's why in January, the gym looks like this, but by February, it looks more like this, right? But there's always that one person who manages to stay through and do what it takes to go through and achieve their goals. What is it about that one person that distinguishes them from everybody else? What are they doing? I am Dr. Roshanak Hashemiyun. I am a clinical and computational neuroscientist, and I have a very serious love affair with the brain. And the reason is because when I was young, I learned early on that everything that we think, see, feel, do comes from our brains. So our brains are absolutely extraordinary. And we don't really think or realize that whatever we're doing is really biologically based. It's all coming from here. When we're setting goals and we want to set up habits and all that stuff to be able to get what we want, we're not really thinking about using our brains per se and leveraging how it works in order to be able to get what we want. But I'm going to help us really start focusing more on that. So here, just underneath this turquoise blue area, these areas that you see here, this is really where you start to, where you're getting your habit formation. And when you start to set your goals, your goal setting and where you're trying to get yourself motivated, that comes from this area called the cortex. So this right here is the key to your success. The brain is absolutely amazing. It is only 3 pounds and it feels like firm jelly. But in the first year of life, it triples in size because you're learning so much. There's so much growth. It has 100 billion neurons. And just to give you the idea of scale, that's basically the same as the number of stars in our Milky Way galaxy. And yet, that's only 10% of the brain. 75% of the brain is water. There are trillions of connections, and these connections can go at speeds of as fast as 250 miles per hour. And yet, your brain is 2% of your body weight, and this 2% is using 20% of your energy. And that's expressed in terms of blood and oxygen. And you cycle about 1 liter of blood through your brain per minute. And if you're really working hard, if you're really using your brain, you're using up to 50% of your body's energy. So like when I'm working really hard, I am burning calories. Okay, we have about 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And 95% of those thoughts tend to be repetitive, and unfortunately, 80% of them happen to be negative. So we take in millions of bits of information per second through our brains, millions of bits per second. So the brain then really needs to optimize this information processing, and it does do that. And sometimes when it does that, it actually causes an intentional blindness. So there are things you won't see or pay attention to. So the brain, as I just mentioned, has optimal function parameters, just like any machine, right? I mean, this is the greatest feat of engineering known to mankind. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in love with the brain, it actually is. And you've got it, but it needs to function within certain parameters. So, you know, we're talking about being able to get our goals in times of uncertainty. That means the unknown. That means something new. And actually, the brain functions best when it's working between some new information coming in and that which is known and stayed. It also, as I said, in the first year, even you're tripling the size of your brain, it spends all this time learning and creating positive behaviors and your world model. And so it really relies very heavily on structure because it makes a construct of your world model and you. And the brain is a powerhouse, as you've seen, but it's extremely efficient. And it does this by optimizing information. So starting from the first, optimal function parameters, change is inevitable, right? We need to work between the parameters of new and old. And since change is going to happen anyway, we might as well leverage it. So right now you're thinking, gosh, everything has changed so much. I just can't do anything else. How am I going to do this? And the fact is that since you know that change is happening and since it's already here, what you can do is use it to your advantage. And I'm going to tell you how you can do that in just a little bit later in this talk. So not to be feared, your brain is actually created for this. It's called behavioral flexibility, and you are stars at this. So the brain requires structure. So what you really need to do is create landmarks. The other thing that we're having a problem with in these times of uncertainty and this pandemic is, you know, things can be very homogenized if we're working from home and we're socializing from home and we're on Zoom all the time and our kids are at home and everything is at home. So this is just like one flat landscape. So that's not good. What we need to do is for that structure is to create landmarks. What do I mean by that? So January 1st, everybody is making new goals. They're setting new lofty goals. They're going to do this. They're all jazzed up. They're energized. Why is that? Because January 1st is what we call a temporal landmark. We have arbitrarily picked that day to say, this is the day that's important that I can start something new. But you can create these temporal landmarks anytime you want. So you can say, Thursdays are my lucky day. On Thursday, I'm going to blah, 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 for example. So you can create landmarks that then give you a new starting point and create this artificial structure that serves your brain well. Another way that we see landmarks are created is when you look at design. So here you can see everybody is in a workspace. They're in work mode. The brain is thinking work when they're here. But this area here, this is for watching TV, maybe socializing. Your brain automatically shifts gears into another way of functioning. It's a different mode. So you see that all the time. Here's a large space. And now this space is the relaxing area. This is the area where they're going to eat and socialize. You see, this is a little maybe nook that you can read. So this is an artificial landmark that's created that cues your brain, I'm doing this now. This is another example. So here's your dining area. You've got the back of the couch to it. So now this is your social area. You're going to eat here. You're going to hang out here. So see, landmarks are something that we're just used to doing all the time. But if you're conscious of them, you can use them to help your brain do what you want it to do. So the brain optimization. The way that the brain optimizes things is by creating or working through habits. And those habits are subserved by systems. And these systems, well, the whole point of all that is to give you the best quality of life that you can have. That's what we want, right? So we've learned that achieving goals, which will hopefully give us the best life possible, is classically we've been taught that it consists of creating habits and being motivated and perseverant, right? Wrong. Really, achieving goals is about first your priorities, then setting up your habits, and then the systems that support those habits. This is what you can think of as PHS, and that is the best way to go about with your goals. So let's start with the priorities. What is your priority? Well, oh, sorry. First, I forgot this. Goals are unavoidable, right? We have them all the time. So you decided that you wanted to learn more about goals. So you set the goal of coming here, and here you are. So maybe you're thirsty, and then you say, well, I'm thirsty. What am I going to do? You set the goal of getting a drink. Then you get up and you go get a glass of water, for example. Boom, set goal, goal accomplished. So it's not this big, scary, hairy animal that, oh my gosh, I've got to set these goals, and how am I going to get there? You're setting goals all day long. So what you want to do is to think about your larger, higher level goals. That's what we're talking about when we're setting our priorities, right? The whole point is to start from the top down, and the top is you want a high quality of life. So the best thing to do when you're setting your goals is to measure 7 times and cut once, because you really want to set up goals that are aligned with who you are, what you believe in, who you want to be, and what is aligned with your intentions and your deepest truths. So you start with that. And then what do? Well, first, you've got to pick the goals that make sense. You start with your high priority, your why, and then you pick this goal and this goal and this goal. And you want these goals because they are aligned with your best life. Well, great. You take a lot of time to do that because everything then flows down from there. That's the top of the hill. That's the top of the mountain. So the next thing that you do is you have to take action. I was thirsty. What am I going to do about it? I chose to drink water. That's my selection. What was the action I took? I got up to drink my water. I drank the water. Goal achieved. Now, you might have more than one goal. Goals are competitive. You want to drink water, you want to eat chocolate, you want to watch TV, you want to. And so we end up having lots and lots of goals. So goals compete for your resources, your brain's resources. Every morning you wake up with a fresh supply of cognitive resources. It's like your muscles. When you first go to the gym, you're full of strength, you're ready to go, you're a powerhouse. And then by the time you're done with your last set, you're like, oh my gosh, you're totally struggling, right? Goals are the same way, right? Because of the cognitive resources, we start off in the beginning of the day. So how can you make sure that your highest priority goals win out in that competition? What you do is you hitch your wagon to a star. And the power that you can get to drive your high priority goals comes from emotion. You have a part of your brain that is responsible for emotion. Emotions are very powerful drivers. We know that. And you can use that to drive, to power through getting that high priority goal. So one of the things that you can do, for example, to use your emotion in order to get what you want is to start setting your goals and start moving through accomplishing those goals when you have a strong insight. Or if you're at work and you have, your employees, and you want to change direction of your business, how do you get them to come on board? You don't just send them a PowerPoint or a memo and say, these are the new goals of our company, this is what we want to do, because there's no emotional attachment to that. Sure, you've listed out everything that they need to do, all the steps they need to take, but remember the goal competition, and ultimately it's probably going to fall by the wayside. What you can do is tell them a story, explain to them why it's important for you, for this company, to take this new direction. Get them on board, get their emotions connected to it, and then there's a much higher chance for you to succeed in accomplishing your goals. So important points about goals are, well, selection and action, as we discussed. What's the problem here between selection and action? Selection is really important because we are choosing the highest priority that serves us best and serves our values best. We don't just want to look at metrics, strategies, and tactics. Because if we're not selecting best for what reflects us and our values, we could be accomplishing our goals, and yet we end up somewhere we didn't really want to go. Maybe you really wanted to go to someplace warm, and you ended up in a ski resort instead. Your metric for success is 100%. You got to that ski resort, but really what you should have been doing is hanging out on the beach, right? So make sure that you're truly selecting what you want and not just going, so that's qualitative, and not just going by metrics and strategies and tactics, which are quantitative. The quantitative serves the qualitative. Otherwise, you're going to end up driving 100 miles an hour, and maybe that's not really where you want it to end up, right? So success is not all it's cracked up to be. You want a success that makes sense to you. Great. Another important thing about goals: selection and action get uncoupled. The problem with getting your goals is that selection gets uncoupled from action. That's where the danger is. So you want to be careful when you're selecting your goals to immediately start to take some action that gives you some momentum in moving forward, because otherwise you've got this uncoupling, and then, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get what you want. Okay, action. So now you're taking action after you've chosen what you want to do that's aligned with who you are. Now you're going to start creating your habits. Well, the most important thing about creating your habits is knowing what actions to take so that you can get to what you want. And this is really the hidden variable about actions. You got to know how to get what you want. You could have the right selection, you could be full of energy, you could have your emotions, you're energized, you're ready to go, but you don't know the how. So make sure you take the time after you've selected your goals to figure out the best path to get there. Habits. Let's go back to this beautiful brain, right? Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Oops, I keep doing the same thing. Hold on. Can't get out of here. There we go. Sorry. So habits are actions that you take over and over again. They're repetitive actions. So you take an action, and then you take it again, and then you take it again. What is that? You get up in the morning and you go for your cup of coffee. That's a repetitive action. What do you do to get your cup of coffee? You go into the cabinet to take out the coffee, then you go to the machine to, grind your coffee, and then I don't drink coffee, I don't know, and then to make your coffee, right? So it's a repetitive action that you've done enough times, you're not thinking about it when you do it. So that becomes an automated action. It becomes non-conscious. That's taking place here. So you set your goals. What you want to do is drink your coffee when you first started, and you thought about it. Sorry, it's actually down here. And then as you do it over and over and over again, it gets shifted into this area of your brain. This is the area that is subcortical, and this is where your automated actions occur. And this is where you're conscious, right? And this is where you're not so conscious. So I don't want to say subconscious or unconscious. They have their own meanings, but it's a non-conscious action. Basically, your automated actions don't require energy, right? Remember, you've got this reserve, you've got a fixed amount. So you want to move things that you don't really need to be thinking about to something that requires a lot less energy, so you can focus your attention on what really requires it. And that's what we're talking about when we say it's energy optimized. So you develop habits to optimize your energy. Basically, what you're doing is you're turning a habit into an impulse being basically an uncontrollable determination to act, right? You don't think in the morning about getting your coffee. You're just driven to go get your coffee. That's an impulse. And it doesn't require much. You're just going. And that it's driven from a pattern that's in your neural networks. So if you think about like a song or Pavlov's dogs, right? Pavlov's dogs had this association. So whenever they heard the bell, they started to salivate. So you've got a cue or a trigger that makes you do something, right? Or like sometimes a song that you really love, when you hear a few words of it, then suddenly the whole song pops into your head. So that's what happens when you create a pattern of activation in your brain that then just goes on its own. So developing habits. When you're a baby, you're learning everything. You don't even know that your arms and your legs belong to you. You learn and you learn and you learn, and you start to learn what works and what doesn't work for you as you're growing up. You start to develop what are called positive behaviors. And so by the time that you grow up, you have now an arsenal, an entire array of behaviors that work for you, that have also given you your personality. It's who you are. This is your identity, right? This is what your character or your qualities have developed from a series of behaviors that have worked for you. So basically a bunch of habits. So what are the types of habits that we have? One is outcome-based. Now, outcome-based habits are acquired behavior patterns. You know, you follow these patterns regularly until they almost become involuntary, what we talked about with automation and, you know, like becoming almost like an impulse. Then there's the identity-based, which is what we just talked about now. And the identity-based habit is really something that is in line with who you are, your dominant disposition, your prevailing character, your prevailing qualities. And that's very, very powerful, because the brain will do whatever it takes to make sure that you are behaving in a way that is true to your identity. So for example, if you want to get into a healthier body, you go, well, I'm going to lose weight. And if you think of yourself, if your identity to yourself is, well, I'm the one who's been fat my whole life, but now I'm going to get into shape, and I'm going to do that by losing weight, until you're fighting a losing battle, because you're rolling a rock uphill. You're fighting against what you believe you are, who you believe you are, what is your integral truth. So you may go to the gym for a while, but you're using a lot of resources to keep doing something that is against the grain. There's a lot of friction there. What you want is traction. So instead, you think of yourself as a healthy person. I am a healthy, strong, well person. Now, you don't think about going to the gym. That's just one of the many actions you'll take, because it's aligned with the identity that you believe. So it just makes it easier. So we're talking about driving forces. So you have an identity, that identity leads to your beliefs. Your beliefs will cause you to have actions. Those actions will turn into habits. Your habits will then dictate your destiny, which of course then confirms or gives you your identity, and becomes this big loop. This is really important to think about this, right? This is why I think the actions you take and the habits you create are really important, and also how you can change them. So why do habits succeed or fail? One of the things that's really important is that when you're thinking about your habits, you need to make them concrete. If you say, you know, I just want $1 million, that's what I want. That is so abstract. Your brain is using all kinds of energy to be able to try to figure out what that means. But if you have a concrete thought, you know, I'm going to get 2 clients by Thursday. Right? That's a different goal, something more concrete. Then you can break it down into even more concrete bits. How would you get those clients, right? Remember, we talked about that hidden variable, the how of the actions. So concretize what your goals are as much as possible, so that you can optimize for the amount of energy necessary, right? And then the other thing that you do is, of course, using your emotions, right? What you want to do is concretize it, use your emotions to drive it, but also, think of it as one thing at a time. It's easier to create something new than to change something old. So the parts of our brain that are responsible for creating a new habit are different than the parts that are responsible for changing or adjusting or breaking a bad habit. So what you want to do is use your resources efficiently. And as we're in times of uncertainty, great, this is how we're going to start leveraging change, right? So things are changing. When your environment changes, you need to change with it, right? The series of things that you do or the behaviors that you express are different when you go to the beach as when you go to a ski resort, right? The things that you're going to do, the actions you're going to take are going to be very different. And that makes sense because of the environment and the environmental cues. So when you're at the beach, your environmental cues will be, it's hot out and you're going to be in the sun. So you get your sunblock, for example, and you just don't even think about it. You put on your sunblock and go out, right? Very different. You're not thinking that at all. You're not cued for that when you're in the mountains, when you're in a place where it's cold and snowy and so on and so forth. So you'll express different sets of behavior because the environments are different and the cues are different. So when you want to do something, try to set up a new environment or leverage the change of environment in order to be able to create that new strategy for yourself. Last but not least is what we already talked about, is having insight or emotion. So if you use that, you have a much better chance for success. So having abstract will cause you failure. Concrete will help you with your success. Trying to change a habit, a bad habit, or even an adjustment is going to be a lot harder than setting up a new one altogether. So it's a new strategy, and using insight and emotion will absolutely improve your chances for success. And the habit loop goes like this, what we just talked about. You have an environmental cue or trigger, and that environmental cue or trigger will lead to an action, right? It's hot and sunny, you're going to put on your sunblock. Or you're really tired, you're tired is a cue for what am I going to do, excuse me, and you decide to go to the cabinet to start making a cup of coffee, right? So you cue, you trigger, excuse me, you have an action, that action leads to a reward. Now, this is important in the beginning of creating your habits, right? Because by the time they're really established habits, they're just going on autopilot. You're not even thinking about it. But in the beginning, when you're setting up your strategy, you want to set up an environment where you have a cue or a trigger that will lead you to perform that action, that will lead you to the reward, and then so on and so forth. So I want to exercise, right? And sometimes I'm just sitting too much. What do I do? So it's middle of the day, I'm at home and I haven't had a chance to exercise. I'm really stressed out, but I ate and I want to brush my teeth, right? So what do I do? Every time I brush my teeth, I'm staying there with an electric toothbrush, nothing else to do. That's my cue to take an action. What do? I start doing leg lifts. I'm doing my leg lifts while I'm brushing my teeth. So now I've gotten some movement and some exercise. I'm rewarded. I feel better. I'm stronger. So every time now I've created this habit of I go to brush my teeth, I'm doing my leg lifts or whatever. See what I mean? So what is it that you need then to support your habits? So we've started off with the beginning, we've started off with the environment, but really what you want is a system and not just one cue, but a series of cues. Think of it like a domino effect. So one cue is great, but having a system set up, that's like having a road that is, that's like having a road or a scaffold that is supporting your habit. So all the things that you want to do, you're going to be able to more easily do. All those actions are going to be queued up one right after the other, like a set of dominoes when you set up a system. And again, the other thing to support your habit is your identity, right? Because, excuse me, because you're going to do whatever it takes to be aligned with your identity. Oh, something else I wanted to tell you about the system. The system is really important. What is a system? A system, basically, think of it as like the telephone system. There's a series of things that are in place that have to occur one after the other in order for the phone system to work properly. So systems are devices or processes in a specific order that has to occur in that order so that it will function seamlessly. So you don't have to think about it. You just set it and forget it. And when it's not in order, right? it doesn't work properly. You know, your climate control, whether you're keeping your house warm or cool, works on a set of systems. This device works on a series of processes that go in a particular order. It senses the temperature, then it cues the device to go on, then the heater, the pool comes in, then it senses the temperature, it cues the device to go. See, that system goes in a particular order. If you're out of order, it doesn't work, you know? So somebody wants to get married, right? So a guy comes in and he proposes to a girl and then he asks her out on a date. No, it goes in a certain order and then everything works, everything flows, right? I forgot to say about that. So systems, as I said, are basically the road on which your habits drive. They're going to guide your habits so that you're taking an action and you're doing something, but you don't want to like fall off a cliff. If you've got a well-paved road, your habits are going to stay on that road, and chances are they're going to end up getting to the destination. So you can start with your goal selection and then create a system that your habits will go along on until you finally end up somewhere where you can achieve your goals, right? So what are your takeaways now? First is make sure you align your goals with your why. You have to know why you're doing what you're doing and align it with who you are, what your values are, and what your truth is. You want to conquer change with intention and tactics, right? Change is going to happen anyway. So number one, you leverage it. Number two, you make it intentional. And number three, when right now, one of the problems that we're having in these uncertain times is this homogenization of our environment, then you can start to set up landmarks that will help to parcel out what you need to do so that your brain can change from, it has its structure, it can change from this to that to the other, instead of just being like this lost mosh of I'm losing focus because the landscape's completely flat. And finally, you want to use your emotions, oops, not finally, you want to use your emotions to power habit formation, insights, storytelling, all kinds of things that really have high value, high valence will power your behavior. And finally, now, you set up systems that support your habits. Think of all the different things, think of that how, and set up those different parts that will lead you like dominoes to your final goal, so that this way you've now streamlined and optimized setting your goals and getting your goals. So just remember, you've got to use your head to reach your goals. Thank you very much.
Great presentation, and thank you so much, Dr. Roshanak Hashemiyun, for this presentation. I do have a question related to the willpower and emotion from Rashida Hodges. I would like to read that. She thank you for the presentation, quite informative. I am in 2021 attempting to change from traditional Southern diet to optimize a diet more plant-based. Do you view willpower to achieve this goal as the emotion assisting you to support the habit? And
No.
then second question, what part of the brain drives our willpower?
Okay, so your willpower can become exhausted. You don't want to try to will something to happen. And we think also that we, have this willpower that's going to be amazing and you can do what you want because you're so strong. It's actually been shown through different tests that we are far more prone to temptation than we realize, and that over time our willpower weakens. So that's two important points. Number one, your willpower weakens over time. Number two, you are much more prone to falling into something than you realize you do. And this was a test that was done with smokers. So they had a group of people who had given up smoking and said, oh, I'm done, I'm good. And one group of people were exposed to a movie that had smoking in it and the other weren't. And sure enough, despite how strong their willpower was and how sure they were that they were going to be able to avoid falling back into their old habits, guess what? They were cued, they were triggered. And so they did end up. So you don't want to rely on willpower. That's exactly not what you want to do. And that's what I was saying in the beginning. Remember, like we're taught, we set up these habits, we have motivation, we persevere. No, That's the hard way to do it. And that's why we fail so much, because we've been taught wrong. So we've got these amazing things right here that can do anything for you. Use it the right way. Start off by changing your idea of who you are. So you want to start off with a plant-based diet. Why? What is your why? Think about that. What is that? What does that make you? How does that make you feel? Why is that important to you? Once you set up with that, you don't need to use willpower. You could rely on it. You could waste your energy on it. You could maybe fail. You could do a lot of things. It's up to you. But if you want to optimize, what you end up doing is you use your identity. You don't need to use your emotions unless you're thinking, oh my God, I really don't want any animals to suffer, etc. If it's a very powerful driver, great. Hit your wagon to the star. But also your identity. You want to leverage all the tools in your toolbox to help you to get what you want. So do that. And then when you're thinking about what is important to you, when you're thinking about what drives you, you're going to naturally move in the direction of what you want.
Thank you so much for that, Doctor. Now from Ali Shurila, she has a question. I would love to hear more about establishing landmarks in a uniform landscape, like example, stuck in a small apartment, not much room to separate space all day. So it's about our environments today.
So the person who asked that question, I would like a little bit more clarity. Can you unmute them so they can ask me personally?
Sure, they can unmute themselves. So Ali, if you want to unmute themselves and ask the question, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
So the question is just about how you're saying like establish different spaces. And my apartment is small. It's one room. I don't even have room for a desk. And so I just work on my couch. And like, what are your recommendations for creating like boundaries and barriers? Because I feel like being just in one space all day long, like my brain just gets jumbled up.
Right.
So when you don't have the ability to say like, this is my office space and this is my eating space, what are your recommendations for working in an environment like that?
So the brain cues like this, it's great. So if you have like a little area where you've got your computer set up, and if you don't, you should set up a little area, even if it's like the corner of a table. And every time you work there, right? And when you sleep here. And when you're talking on the phone, you talk there. 3 different corners of your room, right? You don't have to do something grand, but even like one of the tricks for interior decorators is to turn the back of the couch, and that automatically separates the space, for example. So what you want to do is to create little pockets that you associate. It's the association that's important, that you associate with this. So if that's why people who have trouble falling asleep, they tell them only sleep in your bedroom. Don't work in there, don't read in there, so that you're cued when you go in there, this is sleep time, and your brain goes, boom, I'm off to the races. So you don't have to make big changes, but you can make like little corners and make sure you have an association, that you don't talk on the phone when you're working here, for example, right? So take a little area here, take a little area there, and then change that cue. Also, go out of your apartment. This is a great idea. Whenever you go to work, right, normally you'd leave your house. Get up in the morning, get showered, get dressed, leave the house, go for a walk for 10 minutes, come back, go straight to your computer. Boom, you're cued. See what I mean?
Yeah,
Very
thank
good.
you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. One more question from Habiba Koroma. What are some quick win habits that we should start with? We all love quick answers.
Quick win habits. I don't
Yes.
really know what that means, a quick win habit, because your habits come from the selection of your goals, right? The actions come forth from your goal. So I can't tell you do this, do that, do the other, because each goal requires different actions. And that also depends on your environment, right? So as changing environment means you change with it. Nature is amazing that it makes it so easy for you to start a new strategy whenever there's a new environment, because you need that anyway, right? So I can't give you a quick win habit. I can tell you that the actions that you take, you should pay attention, are related to the goals that you want, and make sure you to make them even more optimized, you know the how of that action. Then set up whatever that system is, that get that series of steps in the right order, that then is the platform that your habits can ride on until they, after 21 days, are completely automated in your subcortical areas.
Thank you. Another question from Verna Holmes. How does meditation weigh into this, especially since it's been proven about the instincts of the mammalian and the complex, I'm not sure what it says, along with the neocortex, since some people do achieve and others don't without dealing with willpower. Not sure if this.
I'm not sure what that really means either,
Well,
but
yeah, Verna, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
so I'll start answering what I think the question might be.
Meditation, how it is that?
So meditation actually, certain forms of meditation actually change the structure and function of your brain, which is great. Meditation is a wonderful thing. What was the first part of the question? How does that relate with willpower? Or?
Yeah, here I am. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have more than one person doing work in the same room.
No problem.
Okay, so I was wanted to weigh on meditation because I know that it does help with changing different emotions and your viewpoint towards a particular thing. Let's say cigarettes, etc. So forth. We know it with hypnotherapy. There are very many forms of it, and it helps with the, especially since the mammalian and the reticular formation, which I didn't want to get into, and neocortex tend to deal with the instincts that we are so endowed with. So it's a point of changing. So with meditation, from what I'm understanding and what I've been using, it helps to rechange how the brain looks at it, because the brain is plastic.
Okay, so could you mute yourself again, because there's some noise in the background?
Sure, no
So
problem.
instincts are something totally different than the ARAS, which is the ascending reticular activating system. That's something else. We're talking about, you've mixed up apples, oranges, bananas, and everything else into the same. You just threw everything in there. So meditation is fantastic. Your brain is processing information all the time, and it does this, it's thought, through what are known as oscillations or regular waveforms. And different oscillation frequencies tend to be related to different processes. But you know, when we said that we have all these thoughts, we have thousands and tens of thousands of thoughts all day long, we can also have what are known as runaway thoughts, right? So you start to think about one thing and then it leads to another thing, that domino effect, right? Another thing and the next thing, and next thing you know, you're like all upset about nothing. Right? So what meditation does is it allows you to stop that. There's a theory of, it's called criticality, of the optimum spreading of information. If it's too little or too much, you've got a problem, right? And so imagine that information is being spread just enough, and that's great. But if it's going too far, it's kind of overtaking, now it's messing up information processing for other things. So you don't want that. Meditation helps you to keep yourself within parameters and to change a pattern, right? You're going to change this information. It's like blocking it from running away. When you meditate, you stop, you bring down, and you take control back again of these, let's say, runaway oscillations, for lack of a better word. I'm going to regret saying that, but so that's what meditation does. It's fantastic, but there are different kinds of meditation. Each one serves a different purpose. There's a kind of meditation where you're repeating a mantra so that you get that into your system, into your cells. There's a meditation where you just are quiet and you're calming your brain. Different kinds of meditation serve different purposes, but they are very good. I highly recommend meditation as a brain professional for really being able to get yourself back aligned with your truth, because we are fed so much information all day long. And because we often don't listen to our emotions, because you mentioned emotion, right? So emotions are fantastic, powerful messages that we avoid at all costs. Women are better at it than men, but typically people are always trying to avoid their emotions. How do I get around it? How do I get through it? How do I this? How do I that? And they don't allow emotions to do their job. Emotions are in your brain, and nature is incredibly efficient. You wouldn't have emotions in your brain if they weren't absolutely important, and they wouldn't be so powerful if you didn't need them. So what emotion does is emotions are messengers. They come to you and they say, this is important, you need to pay attention. So they So you get that message if you allow it to come through, and then you move into your executive decision-making areas of your brain, which are separate from your, but they're connected, right? So it's like the neck and the head. You turn towards what's important. Where you focus your energy is where you're using your maximum energy, which is the thing that's really important for you to solve this problem, whatever it is. And so if you don't allow yourself to hear that message, you will not be able to function properly. Meditation can help you to calm down enough to receive a message and then allow it to go forth so you can make a rational decision. We love to think that we are making rational decisions all day long. I am a rational creature. Sure, you are, but guess what? You're not using it. Because most people, up to 80% of our decisions are emotion-based. Well, that's not good. You got a rational brain for that. How do you make the two work together?
Thank you so much. Another question from Ali that I can relate to. She's asking for any tips to deal with jumbled brain, difficulty remembering, feeling oversaturated. I feel like my brain is literally processing information differently since COVID shutdowns, and I'm trying to build new habits.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. So as I said before, the brain is really amazing in that the area of the brain that's responsible for creating new strategies is different from the parts that are responsible for creating a change in your strategy, an adjustment, a discrimination, or also breaking a bad habit. So even those who are suffering from mental illness, like bona fide mental illness, because we're using that term a lot more loosely now than it should be used. The area of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, stays intact and will send that information to create a new strategy for your new, whatever your goal is. So as we just talked about meditation, that's perfect. My first recommendation is meditate. Because like you said, there's all this noise in your system. That means you've gone from laminar flow, imagine, everything is moving nicely and smoothly, to like turbulent flow. And that happens when you increase the pressure or decrease the volume and this thing doesn't have the right space. So you need to make space for things to smooth out for you. One thing is to meditate. Another thing is movement. Your brain takes up all this oxygen, remember? And so what you really want to do is movement. Movement is the very basis of how we function optimally. I mean, even a car, you have the best car in the world, and you leave it in a garage and you don't use it, it starts to fall apart. So one of the things that you can do, and this is tough because we're all stuck at home, is to do some kind of exercise at home and use that to be able to throw out your focus from its unfocused mosh here to I am now focusing on this thing. And then once you're done with that, you get this feeling of confidence. You feel good about it. And once you feel good about it, then you have a better sense of control. Once you have a better sense of control, there actually is plasticity in your brain that says, oh, I can do things about something. And then allows you to move, take action for the next thing that something needs to be done. So what you want to do is start with something new, because that's the easiest way. That's the path of least resistance, and create something that works for you in that something new. Subserve that with meditation and with exercise, movement, and then allow that as soon as that's done and you've got that great feeling that you did this, there's your emotion, and use that to now propel yourself forward in that direction that you want to go.
Excellent. A couple more questions. One is related, in the quest to support developing higher habit formulation, is there a favorite reading resource that you recommend to influence the benefit for adopting better ways of creating these positive habits?
So the resources that I go to are scientific papers. I apologize. But if you send me an email to Access to the Path, then I can see exactly what level you're at and what you're looking for, and I can send you some resources. So anybody who has any questions, wants to deep dive further, also I'm developing a program, because once I started doing this, I realized that there was definitely a need, and there's more that we want that goes into this. There's procrastination, there's learned helplessness, there's so many things that are also part of this. There's only so much I can talk about right now. And so if you contact me, I will help you out and send you whatever else you need.
I provided the website. Is that
Thank
okay? Access to the
Yeah.
path.com.
Well, you can,
Okay.
you can go to accesstothepath.com. There's a button for a free consultation, so we can talk for free for a little while. You can also email me at support@accesstothepath.com.
So excellent. One more question. Have you heard of emotional freedom technique, tapping and or strategies using the body to trigger change?
I know a little bit about tapping. I haven't really studied it enough to give you the kind of answer that I, as a scientist, would want to give you, because I always do all my research before I open my mouth and say something. So there is something to tapping. And again, it's that association, that repetition. But you don't need to tap, I think, don't take me 100% on this, to be able to get to what you want and how you want. Can it work? Yes. But again, you're doing repetition. You know, it's like the meditation that has this repetitive mantra. You've got motion. Motion is great. When you're moving, you are active, you are engaged. And when you are engaged, well, that's everything. So what you can do is find ways to engage so that your goals and whatever it is that you're trying to do or change, et cetera, become really meaningful to you. Sort of like a recurring theme here.
Thank you. And Habiba has another question. Any tips on increasing our habits of organization? So I think she asked more about systems, how to stay organized.
Right. So I'm not sure what you're trying to organize, but if you want to become more organized, this is one of those how things. This is one of those, the hidden variable is really important, right? So what you want to do is figure out what exactly, if you're trying to organize your closet, your drawer, your finances, whatever it is you're trying to organize, you want to look at what is the best way for you to do that. And so maybe if you're trying to do your closet, you start looking at, you can look up on the web and see what are good closet organizers, of physical structures that you can use, other people's ideas that can then give you insight. Or if it's your finances, you would take a completely different route. If it's, you know, getting your papers sorted, what I would do is start again at the very top and ask yourself, why do you want to get organized? What's your why? Start at the top. How does that reflect on who you are and what you want? Let that drive you into, like, I actually have, one of the things that I did was I told myself, you know, that I am financially savvy. This is who I am as a person. So I just started to get organized. Let me get my papers together, you know, let me this and that. And now I'm going to be much more organized with my papers, but I also supplement that with finding out how others who are experts at this, what they've done, and that gives me ideas. Then I set up a system for myself that makes sense. So that, for example, you can set up a temporal landmark. You know, Wednesdays are going to be the day that you go through your papers and your finances. That's your temporal landmark. Boom. So now when Wednesday comes around, you're like, well, this is my day. And you go and you start to set up, to organize. And the next thing that you set up is whatever the order is of how you're going to get organized. And then until that becomes a habit.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And these are all the questions, and everyone saying you're awesome. Thank you so much. And I also appreciate all your comments and answering all the questions. And if you don't mind, I have a few announcements to make. We can put the presentation up again.
Sure. There we go.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. I hope for attending this session and workshop. I hope it was very informative. I know it was for me, for sure. Remember to sign up for New York Women in Business Business Directory at nyweeb.org. We have also a survey, so please answer the survey. That will be very helpful for future events. And for free resources, use mentoring at newyorkcity.score.org, and some other resources, visit we.nyc. Next page, please. Next page, please. Yes, and thank you again for the workshop. One more announcement. We have a Takeoff Now pitch competition on February 24, 2021. There are a few reasons to attend this pitch competition. First, you're going to meet the winners. Second, you're going to see what it takes to have a perfect pitch when you are fundraising or raising money. And you have an opportunity to vote for People's Choice Awards. So again, thank you everyone for attending, for your question and contribution to this workshop. Thank you, Dr. Hashemiyun. That was really grateful, and hopefully we stay in touch and continue to interact. And thank you for your contribution today. That was very much appreciated.
Thank you, Christina, very much for being the facilitator and making this all work out. And I'd like to thank everybody who's attending, and I hope that this was helpful for you. Please, if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everyone.
Have a good day,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.